welcome back to me talking about my version of Marauders in podcast form with Emma. You might notice if you're watching on YouTube this looks a little bit different. That is because we hit 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yes, go us. But yeah, so to celebrate that, we have some cake over there that we're gonna have, and also my room is a mess because I'm packing for college. So yeah, we're gonna enjoy some cake. Okay, so it's not long enough to actually like be in there, so it's just kind of resting atop the strawberry. But I think we gotta light it, right?
Yeah.
And then like happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. It's falling over, gosh. Happy birthday, dear podcast channel, 5,000 subscribers. Happy birthday to you. Okay, woo! She was so happy, Marla. Yeah. We did it! This is our knife. Yep, our cake cutting knife. This is our cake cutting knife because I didn't feel like washing a whole knife. Woo. The lady at Kroger was, so she was like restocking the cakes, and I was just kind of standing there because I had texted Emma, you know, like, what kind of cake do you want? And Emma did not answer me.
I didn't.
And so I was just standing there for a while, and she was like, can I help you? And I was like, oh no, just trying to decide. And then I went and got the candle, and then I went back, and Emma still hadn't answered me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, shoot, and she was like, what you looking for? She started talking to me more, and I was like, as I was telling the story before my phone died, as you can guess, that might become a pattern throughout this episode, which is really fun. Emma still had not answered me. This lady is talking to me, and she's like, what kind of cake do you want? And I was like, I don't know, it's for my friend. And so she hasn't answered. And she was like, oh, like, you know, how old is your friend turning? And I was like, 17. And because how do you explain why we're getting the cake? And so the funny thing is that Emma did recently have a birthday, and she turned 18. But 17 was the age that came to mind. So I guess Emma's turning 17 now. Do you want to talk about why else we have a cake and why we're making today special?
Yeah, this is our last time being, like, together here for an episode.
Mm-hmm. For at least a very long time, like at least until Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't think we're going to be able to find another time to record before we both leave. Also, you will see this episode in probably like 3 weeks because of that fact. I'm stockpiling things out. Like I have 2 episodes that are filmed and mostly edited, and I'm just not going to post them. Like I'm going to release them weekly so that it works. But yeah, so it's so sad. And also this episode is going to be kind of sad. So we just got cake.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Which isn't the healthiest way to cope, but it certainly is a way.
A delicious way.
It's a delicious way. Somebody asked, what our advice, somebody said, I'm moving to a different state and I won't know anyone. Any advice? Well, me and Emma are doing the exact same thing. So, I don't know what to tell ya. But if anybody has any advice for the 3 of us, please let us know.
Most of the advice is, like, join a bunch of clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, get involved. Make friends.
Which is lame.
Wow.
I really hope people aren't, like, disgusted by hearing us just eat cake. Somebody asked favorite dessert? Cake. I have not seen Heartstopper. Somebody asked if we could rank the Marauders from most likely to least likely to wear bell bottoms. And I feel like that's a good solid time. I feel like number 1, Lily.
Yeah.
I feel like she commonly wears bell bottoms, like, just on the daily, you know? I feel like it's just kind of her thing to do. Number 2. James?
Lily would make James wear them.
Okay, yeah. And I feel like he would just kind of vibe with them, you know? And he'd be like, yeah. But after that point, I feel like things get a little tricky.
They actually got a matching pair of them for the
Like they all
concert.
got bell bottoms. Oh my gosh. No. I feel like then Sirius.
Sure.
I feel like he would be apt to do it, and then
I don't know if either of them would.
And then Remus and then Peter. I feel like that's good, okay. Someone asked if Peter speaks French. Because I always have him in France with the French Death Eaters.
What if he, like, does, and then whenever, like, Sirius speaks French, he's just, like, pretends he doesn't know. No one knows he does.
What if, oh my gosh, what if that's, like, his first, like sign that he's deceitful? Is they realize that he's always been able to speak French and he's literally never told anybody.
They'll be like, oh, where were you this summer? And he was, like, in France, and they were like, you don't speak French, though.
And he's like, yeah. That would actually be so funny. Okay, yeah, so now it's canon that Peter has always spoken French. French was his first language.
Yeah.
You know? Peter has been a French boy since day one.
Is Jeffrey the best man? Or maid of honor, or maybe even best animal at James and Lily's wedding?
So
they send an envelope, they just throw chicken in the floor.
Oh my gosh. Canonically, Sirius is the best man. But maybe not anymore, you know?
James was like, Sirius, if Jeffrey doesn't show up, I need you to be my best man as a backup.
Yeah, he was just a backup best man. And then, like, Jeffrey didn't show up and, like, they both cried. And it was, like, really upset, but then, like, Sirius stepped in. He was like, oh, I'll do it. It's okay. And they're like, it's not the same. And you know it.
And imagine at the end, it's like Jeffrey, like, in the distance. And they're like, Jeffrey.
He was there the whole time. He had a secret mission. He couldn't be there.
Jeffrey's in the order of the fetus.
I hope everybody's doing great, and we are gonna have to hop on into this episode. So if you know what happened in the last episode, it's not gonna be happy, but it's also me and Emma's last episode that we're recording here. This is just not gonna be good, but I feel like we just gotta embrace it, you know? We just gotta go with it, cause nothing has gone right. Now we're recording on my phone, which I didn't want to do because last time it was a nightmare. Cause there's like no battery left, and then like everything started dying. My phone died. My computer almost died. The camera died. Lily's parents died. I'm kidding. But anyway, so what should we do to hop on into this episode? Let's move to college right on into this episode, you know?
Sure. Okay.
So here's the thing. So our girl Lily, turns out she's not doing too well right now. I know, it's kind of shocking because her parents died. But here's the thing. Do I want to stay, like, in grief forever? Not really. So we're gonna go through this about as fast as I feel comfortable, without it, like, completely ruining everything and just being like, it's sunshine rainbows now, you know? Like, that's not how it works. But, like, I am only gonna put you guys through, like, this episode. I was gonna have the sad era be a bit longer, and it's basically just gonna be this episode. Okay, so basically, it was really tough, and it was made worse by the fact that, like, it was front page news, because the Daily Prophet is awful, and we hate it, and this is the beginning of the we hate the Daily Prophet train, you know? And so that's how James and the others found out. While they're, like, at breakfast, and, like, she's gone, and they're like, think it's something
Lily
else.
Got called
they're
away?
Like, oh, yeah, what's going on? Oh, no. So that's, like, not good. And there's just, like, so much confusion because, like, everybody finds out about it. And it's, like, you know, the few kids that get the Daily Prophet are like, yo, what the heck? And so then they're telling everybody. And so Lily's in Minerva's office all morning. Like, transfiguration classes are canceled for the day. And James can be found just, like, sitting outside her office door. He also skipped all of his morning classes. And he's just, like, sitting there, just, like, waiting, fiddling with his wand. And the others only skipped, like, their first class of the day, which I think was, like, charms. And then after realizing, they're like, she's not going to come out anytime soon. So they decided to, like, try and go back to class and, like, try and maybe focus on that. But James was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Thank goodness for James.
Honestly, thank goodness for James. James is a real one. But the others are, like, when they're not in classes, they're, like, taking shifts, like, at the end of the hallway that, like, leads to Minerva's office, like, making sure that nobody comes down there and, like, bothers anybody. So they're all being real ones too, but they are trying to still, like, go to class. So when, you know, when Lily finally leaves the room, she, like, sees James and, like, tries to, like, say, like, what's happening, because she doesn't know, like, if he knows. And he's like, I know, and just, like, hugs her and is really sweet, and we love James. But Minnie is like, okay, James, you have an invisibility cloak. And he's like, what? And she's like, you do.
You have it.
She's like, that was not a question. So she's like, why don't you, like, go get that for Lily, and we are just gonna go to the prefect common room, but, like, nobody has to see her, because, like, that would be a little bit dramatic. And so they do. And so once they're at the prefect common room, like, with Remus and Mary, who happen to just not have class at the moment, and who, like, saw them in the hall when, like, you know, they're going through. So they're in the prefect common room. So once they're there, Minerva goes up to, like, this tapestry. I think there's, like, 4 of them, and they're probably, like, you know, the 4 houses or just, like, something. And she just pulls it down, and there's just a whole door behind it. And they're like, with all of our secret passage stuff that we've looked for, we never thought to, like, look behind the tapestry. And so there's a whole door. And so, you know, Minerva does something to, like, unlock it, and she turns to Lily, and she's like, I'm always gonna be here if you need me. And she's like, just eat and try and get some rest. And she's like, I don't think you should return to your classes for at least a week. I'm gonna tell your professor, so let me know if it should be longer. And so then she leaves, and then there's, like, a silence, and then Lily's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. And she's, like, not crying anymore, but, like, obviously she had been crying. And so they don't talk about it. And so Remus kind of goes first, and he's like, okay, so what is the door? What is it? Why is it here? And how come we never even thought to look behind these tapestries? And she's like, well, turns out, head boy and girl used to have, like, private rooms off of this common room. But they stopped doing that many years ago for obvious reasons of head boy and girl being alone together, completely alone. Anyway, she's like, yeah, so they stopped doing that, but she said I can be in the head girl one, so I can, like, be alone and stuff and not have to be around people. And they're like, okay, cool. And she's like, James, your room's probably behind that tapestry, but you're not allowed in there because your parents didn't die. And he's like, oh, shoot. And he's like, is that a joke? like nobody's really sure, like, if it's a joke. I don't think she knows either. She's just kind of like, it's true, you know? And he's like, yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, so then there's, like, another awkward silence, and she just, like, plops down on a chair, and she's like, so, did anybody take notes for me in my classes? And they're like, we didn't go. Remus is like, no, sorry. And Mary's like, okay, you don't have to worry about that, like, at all. And she's like, well, did you not hear McGonagall? Like, I'm not allowed to go back to class for a week. I can't just, like, skip a week of classes. And they're like, Lily,
it's not skipping.
You have other things to worry about. And she's like, I said I don't want to talk about it. Just bring me my notes tomorrow, please. And they're like, girl. But then she's like, literally, I would rather not just sit around having nothing else to think about. And so James is like, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. So the rest of the day was pretty bad. Everybody's just kind of, like, in hushed voices around her. Like, everybody is just hanging out in the prefect common room in between classes. And they would have all skipped, like, as soon as she was out. But she was like, you're not missing anything for me. Like, it's not happening. And so they don't. But anyway, it's just... but somebody was always with her at this day. And she didn't talk about it, and nobody talked about much of anything, and they're all just kind of like, okay, cool, so we're dealing with this, until that night, and they're, like, all eating dinner, like, in the prefect room, and Lily's like, so everyone knows, right? And they're like, yeah. She's like, I mean, like, everybody in the school, and they're all just kind of looking at each other, like, not trying to be like, yeah, it's pretty much all anybody's been talking about, and, like, everybody keeps on asking us where you are in classes, you know, they're not gonna say that. And so they just all kind of look at each other, and then Lily's like, McGonagall said it was in the paper, and James is like, okay. And she's like, can I see it? And Mary's like, no.
Is that for the...
She's like, Lily, I don't think you should. She's like, I want to see it. And Remus is like, really? It was pretty bad. I don't think you should look at it. She's like, then I want to see how bad it was. And so Sirius is like, okay. And he just pulls the paper out of, like, wherever he has it. And James is like, hold up, no, Lily, I really don't think you should do it. And Sirius is like, it's her parents, James. Like, it's her business. If she wants to see it, then she needs to see it no matter how bad it is. He hands it to her, and he's like, and it is really bad. And she's like, great. And so she takes it from him, and a part of her, like, expected it to just be, like, in the paper, like, somewhere, you know, maybe third page, something. But no, it's front page headlines. And it says, parents of Hogwarts head girl killed in political attack. And she's like, ah! Anyway,
oh my gosh.
So not fun. I know, it's really bad. This is the we hate the Daily Prophet train. This is what it is. Hashtag we hate the Daily Prophet in the comments of this, please.
I imagine that's what Lily said as soon as she saw it.
She said hashtag
we hate the Daily Prophet.
Oh my gosh, this is so bad. We gotta make it lighthearted though, so we gotta keep on doing it. But anyway, so she just reads that. It's not fun. It's really hard to comprehend. And so she reads the rest of the article, and for the most part, it's, like, accurate.
Does she know, like, if Petunia's alive?
Yes, she does know that Petunia is alive. I'm gonna get to that in a second. But Petunia's fine, but, like, Ministry first thing they did was go to Petunia. Actually, Petunia actually heard about all of this before Lily did. Because Lily was, like, in school, and they knew that she was gonna be fine. So that was rough. But, yeah, the article says nothing about Petunia. It does not say that she exists. And I think that's probably, like, the one thing that the Ministry did. Like, they stepped in and were like, yeah, who is she? But anyway, and, you know, it explained how bad everything was, but how they told other Muggles that, like, they died in a car crash, and so that's why it was so sudden and stuff, and that's why Petunia uses that excuse later for Harry's parents. Anyway, but yeah, when it gets to the reasonings, however, so, like, all of that is accurate, but when it gets to the reasonings, Lily just stares at this line and then reads it aloud, and she's like, an attack on the school and Albus Dumbledore's leadership. And she's like, they're acting like this is not because I'm Muggle-born. Like, it's just about Dumbledore. And the others just kind of look at each other, and Sirius is like, I told you it was bad.
And it's, like, her parents, too, and they're like, ooh, a little scheme to get Dumbledore.
I know! It's not fun, okay? I think, honestly, at this point, besides, like, you know, the pureblood families and stuff, I feel like most of the Ministry is actually okay at this point. It's just, like, the Prophet. It's just the Daily Prophet is just propaganda all the time, 24/7. So we hate the Daily Prophet. Yeah, so the next few days are wacky. Lily is just, on edge, not herself. But she writes
wonder why.
I know, but she writes to Petunia, like, I don't think she probably could that first day, but then after that, she writes to Petunia, it doesn't really go well. Petunia blames her for what happened. Because, kind of, yeah.
Something magical happens that might have something to do with your magical sister.
Yeah, literally. And so, yeah, so Lily's like, I can't even, like, be like, how dare you think that? Because, like, probably wouldn't have happened if I wasn't a witch, you know? Definitely wouldn't have happened, not probably. But yeah, and it's hard for her to, like, you know, a lot of times she's like, oh my gosh, Petunia's being crazy. She's like, honestly, at this point, like, not the craziest thing. And so, you know, she's trying to just not blame Petunia as much, but it's not fun. And Petunia, like, had the whole, I already said this, that she had the whole situation explained to her by wizards, and so didn't really want to hear from Lily at all. So not fun. But she was like, here's the funeral, you can come, but, like, stay out of my business. I really don't want to, this is just kind of a lot right now. And so Lily's like, okay. Yeah, so that's that. And then, so Lily pretty much doesn't leave, like, the prefect's common room. Like, she's just there. She has all of her meals in there. Because when she tried to go out into the castle, and it's just filled with people being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she's like, you don't know my life at all. And, like, why? And she just is really uncomfortable with that. But she's in the prefect common room. She lets people, like, come and go as they please, but doesn't really have interest in, like, anybody that her friend's doing. And I think the prefect's common room has, like, a password, so it's like, you know, she knows nobody crazy is gonna come in. And so some prefects actually come in and are like, hey, I'm, like, so sorry, I heard about this. And she's just kind of like, cool, you didn't know them. I don't, like, fine, but she doesn't really, how do I describe that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, when people try and be like, I'm so sorry, and you're just like, you don't, like, know anything that happened. So it's just weird. But the only person that really, like, did mean something was when Julie came, because we are kind of back to loving Julie, and so she comes in, like, on the second day and brings her flowers, some roses for her mom, and she's just like, I know that there's nothing I can do, and, like, I don't even know if I should be coming here because of everything that happened last year, but she's like, you know, Julie just felt really bad and stuff, and Lily at that point is kind of like, what else can Julie do at this point? Like, she's you know, she's like, you know, it really sucked what she did before, but, like, she's doing the absolute most that she can right now, and so it's like, you know, starts to, you know, that kind of heals a little bit more, a little bit with this, but yeah, so that's lovely, but we're gonna so grief makes Lily much more angry than she expected it to, and it just, like, happens at weird times. Like, Peter, like, sniffed too many times, and she just, like, yelled at him. Or, like, it's too quiet, and she's like, guys, why is it so quiet? And they're like, hello, I don't know. Like, it's just weird. And the magic, I think, was also really difficult to do, which also made her more angry. It was not a fun cycle. It just doesn't really work the way that she wants it to do, and then she would, like, explode with anger, and then, like, magic would blah, you know, like, whatever she's trying to do, she's, like, just trying to, like, levitate something to her, and then, like, everything in the room just, like, right at her. Oh yeah, one day Sirius just, like, takes her wand away and is like, you're not allowed to use this until you chill the frick out, and so then she yells at him too, and is like, you can't tell me to do anything, my parents died, and he's like, okay. And, like, honestly, like, that's helpful at times. He was very much the blatantly, like, just was like, he didn't sugarcoat anything. He was just completely honest with her about everything. Like, he's like, yeah, you're doing too much right now. Like, you're just not gonna do it. She's like, what the heck? My parents died. He's like, fine. Doesn't change what I'm saying. But yeah, and it drives James up the wall because he's like, we have to be nice. And Sirius is like, no, we don't. She's fine. Well, not fine, but, you know. But, you know, so she needs all of them at different times. You know, she really needs Sirius to be honest with her a lot of times. She really needs Peter to just change the subject and talk about anything else. And then Remus was, like, always reminding her that, like, you know, everything's gonna pass, like, the pain will end. And then James is just comfort man. He is just, we love James. But I will say, I don't think she realized that she really, like, needed James that much until, like, the second night. She wakes up, like, crying, like, not having a good time, and she thinks she's, like, all alone, and so she goes up to, like, get water or something, and opens the door into the prefect common room, and all 4 boys are just, like, there, sleeping on the floor, or on various couches or something, and she just, like, she almost starts crying again, and then James is, like, closest to her room, wakes up, and then just, like, stays with her for the rest of the night, just listening to everything that she has to say, like, in her room, until, like, she falls asleep, and he then goes back to bed. And I think they all slept there, like, for a while, you know, it was just, they're like, this is what we do. Yeah. Anyway, so, day before the funeral, so fun. Anyways. I'm really sorry, guys, I promise this episode will not be that long. So, the boys plus Mary are, like, you know, hanging out in the prefect common room. Lily's trying to study without, like, zoning off into sad territory, and I would say it's not going great, but it's not going terribly. But then she hears the door open again, and she isn't facing it, so she doesn't, like, think to look up. She's like, it's probably nobody, you know? Until she hears James speak in, like, kind of a terrifying voice that she hasn't really ever heard before, and he's like, you need to leave. And then the other person is like, I have every right to be here. And she's like, oh my gosh, I know who that is. And it's Severus. And this is the part where anyway, so she just, like, snaps up and looks at him. And she's just like, what the heck? And, like, all of her emotions are showing on her face. And it's, like, very obvious she doesn't want to see him. And she, like, kind of vaguely hears the others being like, okay, like, you gotta leave, bro. Like, this is not the time, the place. But he holds his ground. He's like, you know, he's like, I know you don't want to see me, Lily, but they raised me too. And she's like, shoot, they did, didn't they? And he's just like, he has, like, genuine sadness and hurt in him. And she's like, oh my gosh. But Lily, like, can't say anything. Like, she can barely even, like, look at him at this point, and so she just, like, randomly focuses at, like, a random point in the room and just, like, looks at that. But she doesn't say no, and so Snape continues, and he's like, you know, I couldn't go on any longer without, like, saying something to you. I'm the only one in the whole school who actually, like, knew them. And he's like, and they didn't deserve it at all. Like, understatement of the year. But, he's like, it was horrible. I mean, like, of all people, they deserved it the least. They never hurt anybody. And Lily's, you know, kind of nods slightly and is like, yeah, dang, like, he knew them. He saw how good they are. And then, but he always just has to ruin things. And so he's like, I mean, I know more than anybody else that them, they didn't deserve this. They were as good as any wizards. And then she's like,
just,
and he's like, and she says, no one deserved what they got. And she's like, absolutely nobody. And she like finally looks at him again, and he's like, Lily, they were wrong to target your parents. And she's like, they were wrong to target anyone. And he's like, but if they had known you like I know you, if they saw how much better than the rest of them you are. And then she went off. She literally went off. She couldn't bear to look at him. So she turns around, but he keeps on going. And he's like, you aren't like the rest of them, Lily. I've always said that. You're not like other Muggle-borns, which is such a... Anyway, try not to laugh at that. But with that, Lily grabs her wand from the desk.
Laugh challenge. Lily's parents died.
I was more referring to you're not like other Muggle-borns. Anyway... but with that, Lily grabs her wand from the desk in front of her, whips around, and wordlessly casts the most powerful spell she has ever done. She barely had control over it. It's just fire, just spewing straight from the end of her wand straight towards Snape. And so, thank goodness James, like, kind of saw this coming. He's like, she's gonna do something. So he manages to, like, throw, like, a Protego or something at Snape, like, just in time to shield him from some of the flames. And Remus runs toward Lily to, like, try and get her wand out of her hands, and she just starts yelling incoherently. She's like, I hate Sev, I leave, like, you know, all of this stuff. She's like, I never want to see his face again. And then finally, like, and the fire is still going. Like, it's just keeping on going. Everything in the room is, like, singed. And like, pretty much everybody's yelling. And then finally James is like, you have to leave now. And finally Snape goes. And as soon as he leaves, Remus finally gets Lily's wand from her, and, like, yeah, the whole room is just, like, burned. But yeah, Lily immediately began, like, just going off about Snape, how ungrateful he was, about how he's awful, about how her parents had raised him better than that, and then she finally just breaks down, and she really hadn't cried in front of the others besides James that one night, except for right here, right now. So, yeah, not fun.
Not fun.
Not fun, not funky, nor is this fresh.
One could say that.
One could say that. So yeah, so we're gonna keep on going. Are we, like, good? Are we okay?
Well, just with Snape, like, if he can see that, like, she's
I
not
know
the worst, maybe that's just they're not the worst.
I dislike Snape in this house, but mostly because I created this Snape.
Yeah. You
So,
gave him those characteristics.
I literally did. I did. I love when I'm like, oh my gosh, I hate this character, and it's like, I did that.
Like, I'm so sad Lily's parents died.
Yeah. And then I'm like,
how did that happen?
Wonder how that happened. Yeah. Anyway, so do we want to? We're gonna talk about the funeral a little bit. I'm sorry. So anyway, so Lily leaves the next day for the funeral, and she's greeted by like several ministry employees who are like aurors and stuff, and Mr. Potter, our boy Monty. So the employees are like there to supervise at the funeral, and like make sure that nothing happens to go down because it was so, you know, publicized and everything. They're just like, we're just making sure, and then Monty's like, and I'm just here.
He's tagging along.
He literally is like, it's very
he
similar
tags along to all
he's
Lily
like, it's
events.
very similar to how I just showed up when you were almost expelled. But he's genuinely there because he's like, you gotta have a friendly face here. You know, this can't be very fun. So I'm gonna say Lily and Petunia probably only spoke like once during the entire service. And so for the most part, they just like ignored each other, and like Lily's just there as a guest, and that's it. And if people like see her and like know, hey, that's Lily, like they'll talk to her, but besides that, she just sits in the back, and that's it. But then after like the actual funeral is over, and like they're gonna go and like have like refreshments and stuff and do all that, you know, Lily finds Petunia alone, and she like tries to say something, and then it's like, what do I even say? But then to her surprise, Petunia speaks first, and she's like, I know they wouldn't want me to blame you. And Lily's like, I don't know what to say to that either, so she doesn't say anything again. And so Petunia continues, and she's like, and I know I shouldn't, I know that you personally had nothing to do with it, but for some reason, I just like, I can't not feel like I blame you. And Lily just, you know, or Petunia breaks off, and Lily's like, okay, so she's trying to apologize, but like at the same time, she kind of meant what she had said, you know. So Lily's like, yeah, if I hadn't been a witch, none of this would have happened. Like, I know. And that's pretty much all they say, because at that point somebody calls Petunia away, and Lily is like, cool. And so then she goes to get some food herself. She finds like a chair like off to the side, away from pretty much everybody. And a couple like friends of her parents come over and like offer condolences, and Lily's like, thanks. But for the most part, she's alone. And then a stranger pulls up a chair next to her and sits down, and she like barely notices. She's like, it's some other person who's gonna, you know, tell me that it's so sad. And so this person is like, so I bet you had a lot of people you hardly know just come by and offer you condolences today, And she like almost smiles, and she's like, yeah, and you're one more? And he's like, no, I have other things to discuss with you. And she's like, what the heck? So she looks at this dude, and then a pit just grows in her stomach, and she's like, I almost recognize this dude. Like, I don't know who he is though. And the guy's like, Rodolphus Lestrange, nice to meet ya.
Oh.
And Lily just tenses. She's like, I know that name. Sirius has said it before. I don't really remember who he is, but it's not good.
If
Sirius knows him, like, it's probably not good.
Just Sirius knows them out of all of them.
Yeah, no, that's not good. And he's like, you know, you're pretty famous now. You know that? Like, especially among my crowd. And
she's not gonna be like, yeah, woo,
well,
I made it.
He lifts his left sleeve just enough to see a dark mark. And she's like, she's about to just stand up and like yell to alert the ministry officials. She is so upset right now because one of Petunia's rules was for her to not bring her wand in, which is like why some of the ministry people were there. And so she has no defense right now. But he grabs her wrist and holds her down, and while he reaches for his own wand in his pocket, and he's like, I'm not here to hurt you. The contrary, actually. But if you give any sort of signal to those ministry people who have been lurking around, I will. I promise. And Lily's like, I don't have a wand. And she's like, also, I'm gonna ruin the funeral if I do this. That's not gonna be fun. And so all she can do is be like, hope he's telling the truth that he's not gonna hurt me. And so she's like, what do you want? And he's like, smart. I hoped you would be. He's like, I have a message from you from some of my friends. So he's like, so you might have guessed that our recent attack wasn't like personal. We just
you can't tell someone their parents dying wasn't personal.
He was like, well, we just went after, like, the mudblood with the most, like, power at Hogwarts, you know, like, that's it. It just happened to be you, you know? And, like, for us, this has all gone exactly according to plan. The whole world is watching. But there's one more thing we want from you. And she's like, what could you do? Like, what else do you want here? And he's like, well, you know what we want, Lily. We want all the mudbloods to leave Hogwarts, and we're gonna keep doing what we're doing until we get what we want. And Lily's like, shoot. And he's like, right now everybody is watching you to see how you react. So here are your options. You could choose to not return to Hogwarts, live the rest of your days as you should as a muggle, and be safe from this war and all the wizarding stuff forever. Or you could return to Hogwarts and watch as more of your classmates' parents die. And she's like, so she's like, you're lying. And he's like, well, I assure you I'm not. She's like, we're not going to stop with your parents. She's like, no, if I did leave, I'd never be safe from this war. Never. The kid who didn't even know he had magic wasn't safe. The muggles who have been randomly going missing haven't been safe. And he's like, yes, but you would be. We would make sure of that. Because all we want is for
you can trust them.
You can
the
trust
people
him.
who killed your parents.
Yes. But he's like, but all we want is for you to go back to where you came from. And if you did, you would never be harmed by us again. Why would we punish you for something that we want? And he's like, you don't belong in my world, Lily. You never have. So think it over. We'll know your answer. And he just leaves. And just like, she's like, what the heck? And like, she looks around, he's just gone. And so she's like, shoot. And so she sits there for a while being like, is something gonna happen if I tell other people? But then she's like, he also didn't say to not tell people. And so she gets up and she just goes straight to Monty and she tells him everything that happened. And more Aurors are called to the funeral immediately. Lily learns that Lestrange is one of the top suspects in the murder of her parents. And the funeral is put under like tons of magic protection now. And so while all of that is happening, like she like tells everybody everything, like all the Aurors there, like everything that he says. And so Monty takes Lily to the Potters as soon as the Aurors like got all of the information that they needed. And so, you know, she's at the Potters now. And Monty like quietly tells like Effie everything that happened while Lily's just like sitting at the kitchen table, like in front of a cup of tea that she's not gonna drink. And so Effie, you know, once she knows everything, she sits down next to her and she's like, Lily, she's like, it's all right. Like, you're perfectly safe. And so is your sister and her fiance. And he's like, they've got great Aurors making sure, like, people that we know and people from the Order, I'm sure, are also going to help out. And Lily doesn't say anything. She's like, you've had a long day. Why don't you, like, spend the night here before you go back to Hogwarts, okay? Like, it's going to be nice and quiet, you know. You can get all of Monty's wonderful potions that are definitely not drugs. But Lily's like, I'm not going back. And she's like, what did you say? And Lily's like, to Hogwarts. I'm not going back. And Monty sits across the table and he's like, listen. He's like, I know he said that you would be safe if you left, but I really don't think that's true. I think the safest place in the world is Hogwarts. It has magical protections that are so ancient, like, we don't even know how to break them. And she's like, it's not that. Hogwarts is safe. But he said they'd do it again. Mm-hmm. And she's like, they said they'd go after more parents of kids. And he's like, I understand, Lily, I really do, but there's no guarantee that that won't happen if you stay back. And Lily's like, no, that's not what I meant. She's like, if I leave, maybe others will, and maybe their parents won't die. And Effie's like, Lily. And Lily's like, and maybe they could go to a school where kids don't constantly remind them that they're different and horrible just because of who they were born to. And maybe they won't have to live in fear for themselves and for their family, because right now, the wizarding world, it's not safe for us. So maybe we should all just leave. And Effie and Monty are like, shoot. And so Effie's like, I know we can't, like, possibly understand what you're feeling, and if you want to leave, like, it should be your choice. That's fine. But she's like, but Lily, in regards to magic, you and I are exactly the same. We have the same capabilities, and we both belong. And she's like, and they're trying to tell us that, you know, you don't, and if you give into that narrative, then, like, they're gonna start to win, and we can't let that happen. Like, this world needs people like you. And Lily's like, they've already won. And Monty's like, nope, they have not even close. He's like, there are so many people on our side, Lily, like the vast majority, I would say. He's like, I've seen them, and I believe with every fiber of my being that we will win, but we have to be brave. We can't just like give in to the fear. Like, we have to actually fight and stand up for ourselves. And he's like, and it's not easy, but it is needed. And Effie's like, your friends need you, Lily. I've seen that so much. They need your kindness, your ability to see right from wrong, your determination. She's like, there's so much you can do, Lily, and I genuinely think that like you can change this entire world. Like, I've seen it firsthand in my own son. But she's like, and I think that the reason they targeted you is because part of them has seen it too. And if they can take you down, then they've won a great amount. And she's like, don't let them be right, Lily. Just don't. We love the Potter parents.
They really are the best.
They really are the best. And so it takes Lily a long time to decide to return to Hogwarts. But it was also never really a question, you know? Like, she was like, yeah, I'm not going to go back, but, like, she kind of knew that wasn't true. But, you know, she always knew that they were right, that if she did leave, it would send a message that, like, would do exponentially more harm than good, but they had just worn her down so much that, like, she almost gave in. But she didn't, because she's amazing. And so, when she eventually returns to Hogwarts, it's no more just, like, sitting around in the prefect common room and, like, ignoring what she has to do. She comes back and she's, like, she's back, you know? She's trying to do what she can. She's obviously not completely back to normal, but she's back in classes, she's back trying to do homework, and she's back being head girl, which James is extremely grateful for. But she had just this newfound determination to, like, not give in to anything, but it's really hard because grief doesn't just go away. And the fear that she had made the wrong decision didn't really go away either. It's just always kind of there. And so she's sitting in the library one day, for once, like, all alone, when a tall, somewhat lanky, blonde-haired boy with curly hair takes a seat across from her. And he's like, hey. And she's like, hey, who are you? And he's like, right, okay, I'm Thomas Emery's. I'm in Hufflepuff. And she's like, okay.
Cool.
She's really used to just complete strangers coming up to her and just, like, giving her all of these opinions on why her parents died. And so she's, like, really not vibing with it. She's like, what do you want? He's like, right, okay. So I heard about your parents, and I wanted to say I am really sorry. And Lily is just over this whole spiel. She's like, and you want to say that they shouldn't have died and that Death Eaters are bad, right? Is that it? And this dude, Thomas, just, like, blushes. And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. You're probably really sick of people bringing that up all the time for, you know, no reason. She's like, yeah, I am.
You guessed it.
And so she kind of expects him to, like, get up and leave after that, but he doesn't. And so then she looks back up at him to tell him to, like, just leave, dude. And he's like, my parents are dead, too. And she's like, oh, she just blinks, and he's like, I mean, obviously it's, like, not the same. Like, my mom died in childbirth and with me, and then, like, my dad died, like, 6 months ago. But yeah, I wanted to let you know. And Lily's just like in spite of herself, she kind of wants to yell at him and be like, dude, I don't care. But then also she's like, who is this man? So she's like, I'm sorry. He's like, no, don't say that. We just talked about how annoying that was. Like, we're not doing that. And so she just closes her mouth, and he's like, right. And she's like, you say that a lot. But he's like, yeah, and I think we're the only orphans in the school. So that's why I wanted to tell you, because
fun fact.
Yeah. He's like, I think it's really hard to go through it all alone. So I want to say, like, you're not alone, like, because I'm here too. And like,
they get a cake.
No, but Lily just, like, suddenly, like, is just tearing up and is like, what the heck? And Thomas doesn't really seem to mind. She's like, thank you. I don't know why this is happening. He's like, no problem. But then, like, a tear falls down her cheek and she's like, sorry. He's like, no, don't be, like, it sucks. And she's like, yeah, it does. And he's like, and I know, like, it feels like it'll just never go away, but it will. I mean, like, it'll never be the same, like, and it'll hurt, like, a lot, actually, but, like, this right here, this awful part where you feel like you can't function at all, like, that'll go away. And we love Thomas. So he stays with her, like, all the way until her next class, and he's just nice. He's like, a little bit weird, and he's really not that smart, but he is exactly what Lily needed. So he, like, tries to, like, cheer her up, but not in the way that the others did, where it felt like they just wanted her to, like, go back to normal. Like, he didn't want her to go back to normal because he doesn't know, like, what normal is for her, because, like, they just met, you know? And so within a few days, her and Thomas are just, like, incredibly close, and they're both, like, definitely still mourning. I mean, his dad died, like, 6 months beforehand. But they're just helping each other through it. And, like, James and the others are great. Like, Lily knows that, like, they're great, but none of them can, like, really understand, like, what it was like for her, you know? Like, none of them understand what it's like to lose a parent, but Thomas did. And so they talk about their parents, and they cry together, and they learn about each other, and they spend practically every second of every day together. So about a week and a half after meeting Thomas, and about a month after Lily lost her parents, she finally begins to see, like, the truth in what he said to her that day in the library. Like, nothing is gonna be the same, but, like, she's starting to see, like, other emotions coming back into the world. Like, other things start to matter again. And in a way that kind of hurt more, because she's like, I feel like I'm betraying my parents' memory, but, like, when she tells that to Thomas, he, like, shakes his head. He's like, no. He's like, they would have hated to see you like this. Like, they're your parents. They want you to be happy, like, no matter what. So I think the best thing you can possibly try and do right now is, like, try to be happy. Try and find joy again. Like, it's what they would have wanted. And Lily's just like, how does Thomas always know exactly what to say? And that's the end of the episode.
Oh, thank goodness for Thomas.
Thank goodness for Thomas.
Thomas and the Potters.
Thomas and the Potters are really OGs. And I feel like I didn't mention the others very much because, again, I wanted to get through all of this, and now we're, like, a month out from, you know, them dying. So, like, but they were all great, too, you know? I just felt like I didn't really need to go in depth with that because we kind of all knew that. So, yeah. I don't know what to say.
That was sad.
I know it's sad. But I wanted to say, like, obviously, this is not just a one and done plot point. Like,
anyways, moving on. Who's next?
Yeah, like, we're obviously, Lily's gonna deal with this for a while, but, like, that's most of the sad era gone, you know? Like, other things will happen now, and I'm just so sorry. But, yeah, we love Thomas. We can get to know him a little bit more. He's a G, and I promise he won't end up being like Bradley, where, like, we liked him at first and then hated him. Yeah, no, not Thomas. We like Thomas, guys, I promise. But yeah, so that'll be nice. And oh my gosh, the next time we, like, record, like,
oh, it's gonna be weird.
Oh, it's so weird.
I don't know if it's gonna be, like, better quality or worse.
It's true, because we won't have this freaking camera anymore. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but I don't know how we're gonna record our videos. We might just end up, like, recording us on Discord, and, like, that might be it. But yeah, a lot of people have been asking, like, are we gonna keep on doing it in college? Like, we're trying.
I hope so.
I'm
too invested now.
I'm You're saying after, like, a year and a half, you're invested in this?
Invested.
Oh, dang it, what the heck?
I just turned 17.
You did just turn 17. Oh my gosh. No, but it'll be good. I've got all of my mic stuff ready to take. I bought, like, a new thing, so I don't have to take as much stuff. And then I got Emma's whole thing figured out, so she'll have a mic. I'm thinking we can collab with Kristen. Yes, because she will. Kristen is great. She will be Emma's roommate. And I also know her. Like, she's awesome. So, and listens to the podcast. Shout out to Kristen. We love you. But yeah, so I think we'll have some fun times. And I know how we're gonna record the audio. It's just the video that we're like,
we only sometimes
maybe
do
we
that
gotta
here,
think
so.
about that. Yeah, that's true. Honestly, the video here is just never like okay. Like there's always something. But yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be good. But yeah, so I will have stuff stockpiled by the time you listen to this. It will be my second day of classes. Oh, so it'll be my first day of classes. I don't know. So then like
After I do my classes, I'll go read through the comments.
But yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, we're going to college. What do we do? All right. So
I will say one thing.
What will you say?
So I'm obviously not. Petunia's not the best.
No.
But like I understand her like
Oh,
like
yeah.
it gives her a lot to like have this part of the story. It gives her a lot more like
that's part of the thing. When I first came up with this forever ago, I was like, that would make so much more sense, because I was like, I wonder how Lily's parents died, because they were never there to take care of Harry. And then I was like, okay, what if it was a magic thing, and then it made like Petunia be like, that's where kind of a lot of this started, where it's like her whole family has been destroyed by wizards, and like gives her a lot of depth. So yeah, I consider this to be canon, obviously, since it's my version, but I think this part really fits with Petunia's character. So anyway, makes her a little bit more understandable, even though she was awful. Actually, Vernon was awful.
Yeah, what does he got to do with this?
Yeah,
like,
he's there. Like, he was at the funeral.
Petunia is justified.
I wonder if
more
that's
than
how he
Vernon.
finds... Oh, I didn't even think about this, because I was going to have him... This must have been how he found out about wizards.
Probably. Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not a fun little
That's
introduction.
not a fun thing. Yeah, but that's for sure, like, how I've done it. I was going to have him be introduced to him later, but no, he's got to know now. So he had to be told with her. Dang, that actually works really well. Crazy how things happen like that. Well, anyway, let's finish up the episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please bear with us as we are literally in college for the first time. And yeah, it's been great. Shout out to Benji Wilson for the music, and Metamorphomatis for the cover art. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye! Ah! Emma! We're going to college.
I don't ever like think about the fact that I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be taking like chemistry.
Yeah.
I'll be like sitting there.
I know.
Episode drops and I'll be like, boron.